Me?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure like most things I use are default, but I think the
Okay.
isolate thing is unique. I use isolate unique, and then I think I have instead of uh, just pressing delete, doesn't I have delete on Alt Q, but for some reason this thing isn't showing when I'm pressing
Now
Alt.
now you could see control at least.
Could you? Control plus something. That's useful. Ack.
Hmm.
You think it would be more confusing by like just yeah, I think so. Because you'll see me press single letters when I'm actually pressing two things at once. Yeah, we're gonna chill on that thing for now. Okay, fine. Oh my god. Please don't kill my computer. Slowly. It's just... No! Don't deep... Okay, now I got control back. Close the door. Okay. So, yes, I'm recording. Today, or last time, we started off by creating uh, a form of IKFK switching, just for the shoulder, so far at least. And we are going to continue on that, I think. Finish that up in both arms. And then we are going to go over... I can have the thing here. We did this. I can just reiterate it. Because right now the fingers are under a left hand group. And that group is parent constrained to the joint which is deforming the body. And then after that we'll go over a bit of what to think about with rotation orders. And also get into some orient space switching, just to get some functionality so that if you have like an arm, let's go over to FK. So if you have an arm like this and you want to tweak the clavicle a bit, like push it somewhere, you want to maybe drag it up, you often want the arm to like stay in that like rotation and not like follow along always. It's nice to have that functionality, especially for the head, to have the head always oriented in one way and not following like this. So yeah, I'm going to open up the node editor again, and here's the tab we had yesterday. So we have the blender here. Anyone have any questions about this part specifically?
Well, I had something to do yesterday, so I'm still one lesson behind.
Okay, that's completely fine. So to get So what we did, I can just let's repeat some of the steps. So what I did was I just created a controller going into this one, and I just like grouped it and moved this up here and just placed it at this position basically. And then you can it's just like I just formed it into this weird shape, and then you can go into edit and add an attribute, which I did, and I added a float attribute. You can name it something. I named it IKFK. I'm gonna name this one IKFK2 just to show, and then I set the minimum value to 0, maximum value to 1, and just making sure it's keyable as well, and then just add it so it creates an attribute. What I did then was that I took the, can I select all 3 joint chains? So I took these 3 joint chains, this one, which is the one this mesh is bound to, so I'm gonna select all those joints, and this one, which are the IK joints, and this one, which are the FK joints. And I can just show in a new tab and just middle mouse drag them all into here. And then I can just quickly list connection. Oh, that's just a horrible mess, but just an easy way of doing this without.
I mean, if you showed this in yesterday's lesson, then you don't have to do this again in case
Yeah.
I'm the only one who's behind. I
Okay.
can always watch
But
the
what I
video.
did was I just, apart from, let's go back. I'm gonna close tab. I just dragged these in, and then I worked from here. Right, yeah, I showed that as well. And then all we did was we moved these a bit into position. We also added this thing into the outliner. I just clicked it, middle mouse drag, and dropped it, and you'll get this here. And here I have the IKFK attribute, which I'm using to blend. I click tab to create a blend colors node. And then what we're doing is, oh god, I hate these. So we did the shoulder first, and we're just gonna do the exact same. What I'm doing when I'm like pressing this is I'm pressing 1, 2, 3 to expand them. So I can just press 1 to just make them smaller. Press 2 so I can see that specific attributes. It's the only thing we care about. And just try to move things a bit. Things will snap around a bunch when you're working in here. I think you can select nodes, and under option you have pin all nodes by default, which I think I prefer, but I don't know. I think it comes with its own issues. And then you can, under edit, you can pin. I think if you pin, then they don't jump around a bunch. But okay, we have the left shoulder done. Now we're just gonna take the elbow. So we need all the elbow joints. So you have the bound joint, which is this one. Can you read this at all? Should I get closer?
I can read kinda, but in the recordings it's easier to see later.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna try to zoom in then as much as possible. Okay. We're gonna do the exact same setup as we did here. You can also, so we're going to, did I create? Here, I created another blank counters. You can name these. Left arm or left shoulder blend color. and then we're going to make sure that we have the same order, that we have the FK in the top one and IK in the bottom one. And we're going to take the rotation and plug them in like this. And here we have the wonderful, yeah, it's exactly where I wanted you. And this one, rotate into that one. Hell yeah, we're just gonna accept that that's
Wow.
happening. And then take the, we have the blender here, gonna pipe that into the blender, and then the output, gonna pipe it into the output, and have things jump about a bit more. Want to try to make things as clear as possible. So people can follow more easily. Oh, there we have. So we want a sort of a flow of logic going from left to right.
So this creates the FK-IK switch then?
Yes. So what I'm doing here, I'm taking, we have 3 joint chains. So we have the IK joint chain. I'm going to go into the, I'm going to minimize this real quick. So by selecting the blender, I'm going to set the blend weight to 0.5, so it's in between. So we have 3 joint chains. We have the FK1 here, and we have the IK1 here, and then this one is the bind chain. And here we are taking the rotation values, which you find up here when you're moving the IK chain, for example, and the FK chain's rotations as well, and we're just putting them into this blend color node. And one of the XYZ rotations are going into the different channels here, red, green, blue, for the different joints. And then we're just using a blending attribute, which is going from 0 to 1. And 0, it has full, it's just using color 2, and 1, it's just using color 1. And yeah, and then it's just like blending between those 2 rotation values. And then just outputting the resulting stuff into the elbow. It's a pretty simple setup. Oh, shouldn't move that off screen. And then finalizing with the hand. IK hand, we just need to find the FK hand. Shrink this down. Oops. There we go. Again, pressing tab, blend color. Take the blender. And then again, FK in the top. Hell yeah. Gonna select all these top ones and just edit and pin, and hopefully they stay there. Take the rotation from the other one. And out rotation, you can also, if it's not fully extended, you can click here and just put it into a rotation channel like that. Oh. there we are. We have a pretty easy setup for an FK IK blend. So now they should be able to pose each and then have a easy blend between them. And then it's the exact same for the other side. But what we can do as well, which can be nice, is we can add a bit of set-driven key action. So under, can you find it here? Or do you have to find it in under animation key, set-driven key? And in here, you can also do it in the node editor, but you can get a bit better results with set-driven keys or some other functionality. Because what we're going to do is when we're not using, I'm just going to select this attribute and the extra attribute and delete it, so it's not, nothing gets confusing. But we can hide the controls that we're not using. So if we're at 0, we only really want to be seeing the IK controls. If we're at 1, we only really want to be seeing the FK controls. And if we're somewhere in between, we want to see both. And an easy way of doing that is just to use the set-driven key. We load the blend controller as a driver, and then we can select either all the joint or just the parent joint, or the parent control, sorry, and load that as driven. Start with the FK anim, and then we're going to, because right now we are in 0, which means we're in IK mode. So we're going to take, we're in 0, so we're selecting the IKFK attribute and the visibility. We're going to turn the visibility off, because when this is at 0, we want this visibility to be off, and we set a key. And then we're going to take this blender, set it to 0.01 or 001 or whatever. So when it's just above, you don't need to be like this close, but we're gonna turn the visibility back on and set a key. So now we should have, when it's a 0, it's completely hidden, and if it's just above 0, it's showing. And then we're going to do the exact same thing for the IK, so we're just going to press the IK control, load driven instead, and we're going to, because now we're at 1, so we're going to set the visibility off, and again with the IKFK visibility, and key that. You can take the blender, set it to 0.999, select the anim again, make it visible, and once again key. So now we can hide the ones we don't want. I'm also noticing I forgot the pole vector as well. So you can either follow these exact steps, or you should be able to, if I select these two, and I'm going into the node editor again, I'm going to open up a new tab, add these controls, and you'll see the set-driven key that we created, which is this, and it's outputting a certain value into this left-hand IK anim And we can use this node because we have the pole vector here. And we can just extend the pole vector and take that exact same value and put it into the pole vector's visibility as well. And now when we're dragging this from left to right, the pole vector should disappear with the IK hand. It's just a decent way of reusing set-driven keys and not creating unique ones for everything, if you know that the attribute will be the same. Nice. Wonder if it's worth to do the exact same thing on the other side, or if I should continue on to something else. Does anyone have a suggestion? Like it's yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna do the other side because it's pretty quick and we can just get some repetition going. And now I can actually, now we get the full. So we can start off by just taking this, I guess, and the controller here. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to group it. Scale it by -1. Get one on the other side. It's not super important where these are. You can either have them like following the body, or you can just have them just floating in space here. They should be easy to get a hold of to switch, but they should never like be in the way. It's the general principle. Often you'll also like want some form of script to switch between them, so you never really have to use like this. But okay, so we created this. It's got a group. Or actually, before we do all this, I'm going to clean up my outliner a bit and just make sure. So we have the left hand group, which is currently not working as I want. Does it work in FK? Or IK, I mean? Yeah. Might be as simple as me just forgetting an orient constraint. So we're going to zero that out. We know don't need the key editor anymore. I'm gonna find the left FK hand here. It does not have an orient constraint on it, or a parent constraint, so I'm just gonna select the controller, select the FK joint, and add rigging constraint, and then just add a parent constraint. So now the hand is working as it should. Perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna take the blender here, and you can I'm just gonna pair it to the master controller now, and just have it be disjointed for the hand. Just to clear it up a bit. And now left arm component that group I created, and left hand, we can take both of those. I can actually take the left hand and place it together with everything else under the left arm component. And just take the arm component and pair it into the master controller. Check everything's scaling correctly. It seems to work as I want it. I'm probably also going to under the arm component there, I'm just gonna take the IK and FK chain and hide them because I don't need to see them constantly. Okay, so now on this side, created our blender again. I just copied it over, and we have the same attribute from 0 to 1, so you don't have to recreate that. Gonna rename it to right arm blender, or of course use the modify search and replace right left. Get the correct naming. We're going to take the arm chain here and just duplicate it and then unparent, so we have a right arm here. And we're going to take all the fingers and constraints and delete them. We can also quickly, I should also probably first find the right arm here. We're going to take all the fingers, unparent those as well. And we're going to take all the constraints here. Elbow, not the clavicle one, because that one we want to keep. We're going to delete those. So we can set up the fingers first. Where are the controllers located? Okay, so we're going to under the right hand FK anim. We're gonna take these finger controls as well and unparent them. And then we can do, I think we did this for this other hand as well, where I'm just gonna press Ctrl G to create a group down here. I'm gonna press the position I want this group to be in, this specific joint, and I'm gonna press the group. And I'm just gonna constraint and parent constraint, so the group jumps up here, and then delete the parent constraint. And then I'm just gonna name this the right right hand group. Whoops. I think that is what I named the previous one. Just gonna double check. Left hand group. Oh yeah, actually, I did a dum-dum. The fingers that I unparented, I do not need to unparent those. So I can just parent them back into this, making sure that it's the correct hand and not the duplicated one that I created, because I hid that for a reason. So we're gonna take all these controllers and put this under the right hand group, and then I'm going to select the right hand joint, the right hand group, and just add a parent constraint to that as well. So now when I'm moving this joint, the finger controllers are following as well, which is what we want. Just make sure that I didn't put any rotations on there. I did not. We'll leave any rotations. Now we can move to the creating of the IK and FK chain. So I'm gonna unhide this and we're gonna rename this one. So first we can name the FK ones FK K and FK end. We don't need the FK end actually, but so I'm just gonna delete the FK end and then create the IK ones. Just gonna check something real quick. Did I? No. Okay. Just gonna double check how I set up the other component. This is a component group, it's parent constraint. What is it parent constraint to? Going to open up the node editor. Whoops. The node editor. I'm going to just remove all that. Just gonna quickly check what this is constrained to. So it should be constrained by the left clavicle. But for some reason, oh yeah, we painted this under the world. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome. Okay. So we're gonna do the same thing as we did with the hand just now. I'm just gonna create a group down here. I think I snapped it to the shoulder last time, so I'll do it again. You can either snap it to the shoulder or the clavicle. But I'm gonna select the... I'm gonna hide the FK and IK ones. Gonna select the shoulder, select the group, and I'm going to constrain parent constraint again, just to match the position. Name this the right arm component. Just making sure that I'm matching my names. Left arm component group, yeah, right arm component group. Nice. And then I'm just going to put my joint change under that. I'm going to select the clavicle here. I'm going to select the right arm component group. And I'm just going to parent constrain that, but I want to maintain offset since this is where the clavicle is and this is where I place my group. So if you place your group by the clavicle instead, you can have maintain offset off. For this, I'm gonna have it on. So now, if I unhide these chains, they follow with the FK chain, or with the one that's bound with the body. Okay. So now we can first just fix, I'm gonna hide the IK chain, and I'm going to hide I can press the clavicle, just find the clavicle and hide the right shoulder as well. So now I should only be seeing the FK ones. And I'm just gonna quickly create constraints. I think constraint, I want to turn off maintain offset again. Pressing G to repeat the command. So now we have the FK set up. Question is, did I reparent? I'm just gonna check. Yeah. So I'm gonna do that as well. I'm gonna take the controllers here, the right shoulder, FK anim, and I'm just gonna take that under the right arm component group instead of having it directly under the clavicle. Not super important, but it's a bit clearer if the controllers and the joints are also like sharing the same space. Okay, so we have the FK working. Going to hide the FK now, and then unhide the IK one. And now we can switch this to IK. We should only be seeing the IK joints. And we're gonna go into the IK handle creating tool. Create a rotate plane solver from the shoulder to the wrist. And name it the right arm IK handle. And then also create a single chain solver from the wrist to the tip of the hand. Right hand IK handle. And we can also take this controller here from this side and we can just duplicate the group, press Shift P to unparent and group it once more and scale by -1 on X, unparent it and kill that group. And again, if you want the right now these are mirrored, so you'll get the mirrored functionality, but in some cases you want them to be the same, and in that case you can just I'm gonna delete these duplicated IK handles, but in that case you can remove the scaling. Can you just okay, what I would do is I would unparent the shape because we want this specific position and we don't want it to specifically if it's not symmetrical, and we're just going to unscale it, put the thing back and just freeze transforms. I don't know if I had we still have my mirrored behavior. Yeah, I do. Interesting. We're just gonna leave it mirrored. Yeah. Oops. Accidentally deleted. But we're gonna take these two IK handles, place them under. We've got to rename this. So now the IK is working. Gonna select the IK handles and we can write or hide the hand one. Probably also want to fix the pole vector real quick, so we're gonna duplicate that, unparent it and group it as well, -1. Can remove the scale. Oh no, it's gonna flip it, but yeah. I think I can just unparent, remove the scaling. Probably don't want to have 0 in scale. The hell just happened? Let's not have 0 in scale. Or yeah, just gonna freeze the transformation. So it should, yeah, it's sharing the same position still, but it doesn't have negative scale. It's gonna rename those and select that and select the IK handle and constrain and pull vector constrain. Once again, making sure that we didn't get any rotations. So now we should have a working pull vector as well, which we do. Now we can hide that IK handle. We can take this right hand IK group, parent it under the master. Take the pull vector and parent that under the master as well. And now we can take the IK, I can show that one. Take the IK, wait, first I'm just gonna find the, click the clavicle, find that, unhide those joints again, select the right shoulder, right elbow, and right hand, and then the corresponding IK and FK joints. And I'm also gonna click the blender. Once again, opening up the node editor. Just gonna make sure I have a clean tab to work with. I usually like to save my old tabs. These are the set-driven keys that get created. But yeah, it can be a good idea to save tabs in case you want to work on a specific thing. You can also, I think you can create a bookmark. There's some way here you can save it, I think. I think it's creating a bookmark. You can quickly try. So I'm just gonna go back here, get my selection back. I just press Ctrl Z a bunch. And get them all in here. We can hide away this blend shape. I think I have a hotkey for hiding things that I don't want in the outliner, which is, let's try to find it. So in settings preferences, I'm gonna look into hotkey editor. And then I'm gonna search for hotkey and then alt. Oh wait, oh, I can search like that. Alt H. Hide selected nodes. It's the one I have a hotkey to Alt H. Just in case you want to try to keep it a bit tidier. But yeah, let's create bookmark, and I'm just like left arm FK. Name it a bit clearer. Left arm IKFK. Did that work? Oh, you can rename a tab. Oh, that check. Okay, never mind. So left IKFK. And then we can rename this one right. There we go. Did not mean to detach it. Just gonna close that one. Okay. close this one as well. Okay, so now we're going to order these up. We have all the bind joints here. We're gonna get all the IK joints, all the FK joints on this side, and the blender as well. We're gonna try to order them up the same way, having the FK on top, IK below. Should be able to edit and pin all these so they don't fly around. And then again, starting off with the shoulder. So I'm gonna press tab, search for blend colors. You can also click here and just take rotate. These fly about. You can change that options. Pin all nodes by default. Gonna just pin them. Take the IK here. Rotation, the second one. This one, can we find, yeah, the IKFK blending attribute at the top there. And output to rotate. Okay, with everything pinned, it's a bit easier to handle. Again, blend colors. Just connect the. Apparently, it doesn't want to find the blending attribute. Just gonna open it up. Blender. Have the elbows. Take the rotations. Plug them in. And output into the elbow. Rotate. Another blend colors. Rotation. Whoops. Rotation. Whoops. Okay, so now we should have a working IKFK switch on the arm. So we're in IK mode by default, and then we can blend over to the FK mode. I also hid the controllers there, but now they're unhidden. We can make sure that all of our rotations work. Something seems to be off with the hand. So we're gonna check that one, FK. And it's that we're not hooked up to the blender. So now should be able to go between the two states. Select all these and just reset them to their original position. What we can try now, we can either just set up the set-driven keys again in the same way. Can't leave the window. Just gonna make this a bit smaller. I'm just gonna make a new tab. Take the blender. Take the IK controller, take the pole vector, and take the shoulder controller, and just drag them all in here. Whoops. All these shape nodes, we don't need them, so you can all either move them away or hide them away with the hotkey I showed. And then I'm gonna try to use the driven keys that I'm not gonna use the same ones, but I'm gonna try to duplicate them. So if we display and uncheck DAG object only, you'll see a bunch of nodes here. We have the left hand IK and invisibility shoulder. Let's try to duplicate those, which created two more ones. So we have the left shoulder FK1. We can just name this right shoulder. Right hand. And then we should be able to take the blending attribute. Just not have a input at all. I'm just gonna select this real quick. I'm gonna create a new tab. I'm gonna list connections just to see how it's connected. It's connected in input, but that input isn't directly visible. So we're gonna try and can I right click this? And then show all attributes. Oh, there we are, an input. So we're gonna put that into the input, show all attributes, input, and then we have the output again. So we can just, in the IK and pole vector, we want the IK anim invisibility. So we're gonna take the output, plug it into visibility there. And output visibility. And now let's see if this works. Just gonna minimize that. So we're in IK mode now, and we're going into FK mode. So hell yeah. I'm just gonna press DAG originally to hide those things. So now we have that sorted. We can take the blender again. I'm just gonna parent it under the master. Can maybe organize the master a bit later because it gets a bit much. But it's workable at least. Take the right hand group, and we're going to put that in the right arm component as well. And take the right arm component and put that under the master. So now everything still should work. Forgot to in the right arm component, I'm just gonna hide those joint chains. Nice. Any questions about this setup process?
Is it fine if I keep my IKFK switch in another controller?
How do you mean in another controller?
I have a hand controller that just holds all my fingers and stores some poses, and I want to put
Oh
the
yeah.
IKFK switch there.
Of course, yeah. You don't have to have it like a specified controller for that.
Nice.
You can also like if you prefer it, you can have like all of the attributes on one controller if you want to be able to switch. But yeah, matter of preference. Okay. So that's the IKFK setup. Let's see where we're at with this. And both the fingers are currently working with both IK and FK, which they are. had a bunch of just gonna okay, there was no history on it. No idea what that node view is, but I'm sure it's fine. The Maya node editor save tabs info thing you'll see here sometimes is just that if you have this specific object somewhere on a tab here, it'll show here. Just gonna reset that. Reset those. Okay, so we're going to look at. Okay, let's talk about rotation orders a bit, and what I mean by having thought out rotation orders. And it's not very. It's not a very complicated thing to have like a decent thought out. It can be like you can run into a situation where it's like unavoidable, but that's they're just unavoidable. But okay, what I mean by thought out rotation orders is since if we're going into the rotation tool and checking the gimbal rotation, which basically shows what I mean. When things rotate in Maya, they are rotating in a specific order, and I'm pretty sure that's just a property of how Euler angles work, which is a mathematical thing for rotating things in 3D space, which is like the super technical term, I think. But in Maya, you can see here that each of the animation objects and all objects, I think, have a rotation order that you can assign. And the rotation order works in this way that the last letter will be the first axis to rotate. So right now it's Z. And Y will be the second axis to rotate. And X will be last. And X is usually our twist axis, so we probably always want to have the last one you want as your twist axis. And the first and second one you want as your primary motion and secondary motion, mostly. And for the shoulder here, for example, the Z right now is up-down, which is probably, at least since it's in a T-pose, you probably want to be your primary motion, because you're always going to be rotating this first. But in A pose, it might be that you want forward and back to be the one rotating first. But what you can see is if you rotate up down, don't know if I'm just going to turn off. So if you go up down, you'll see that all the axes are following when I'm rotating. But if I were to rotate on this axis, you'll see that the Z axis is getting left behind, because the rotations are sort of in somewhat of an object hierarchy almost. So we can, and what can happen is we can rotate two axes into each other. And this is a situation called gimbal lock. And the reason you want to avoid gimbal lock mostly has to do with just how animation curves look. And can I make an example? Let's make an attempt at least. So you're animating, and you're usually not in gimbal mode, you're usually just in object mode. And we just want to rotate something somewhere. Gonna try to fit these things into view. Okay. So we rotate this down a bit, or let's do the wrong thing. So we're gonna rotate this forward. Let's key it into default position, move it forward, and then key it again. Now in our animation curve, these are, yeah, the top curve is just the scales. You don't care about those. But we have rotated in one action, in a one axis, and we have one similar, like one clean curve to follow that action. But if we were to now rotate the arm downwards, we move this forward a bit, we rotate the arm downwards. Now suddenly we get a bunch of extra keys to manage for this specific motion. So we want to move here and we want to tweak the speed it gets to this position, or the how it interpolates this position. If it wants to be like smooth or like fast and then smooth or something, we have to suddenly manage all these curves. While in this case it might be difficult to have a have like a really good rotation order. But if we were in this example to have instead of x, y, z, if we have x, z, y, I think, and we rotate it forward as we did here, and then we go forward a bit and then rotate it down. Now it's just I think I said the wrong letter, but now it's just a Z rotation that I'm applying later. So we just have one curve that's doing this downwards motion. And this is sort of the thought process behind having been thinking about your rotation orders. What you can do if you want to have like if you have a rig that needs to serve a wide amount of use cases, it's common to often expose this variable. So depending on the animation that the person is about to animate, they can choose which rotation order they want, in case they want to like go up and forward, like depending on the movement and the order of the movement they want to apply. You can have different rotation orders. But having, like for this one example, you probably want, I think this one is set to, if we look at the gimbal, so this is way of observing it, we see that this is clearly the primary motion that we want. And for the elbow, you're probably not gonna end up in some form of gimbal situation, since you're probably always just going to be rotating on this axis. But if we were to want to do weird shit with the elbow, probably want this to be in x, z, y instead, just to make sure that the y is like the primary axis for this controller. And for things like chest, it's basically just pick and choose. If you want side to side to be the primary, or the front to back to be the primary, and then you'll always probably have x as the twist. So it's a bit like, yeah, if Z gets left behind, you can, I guess, rotate it a bit like this. But yeah, that's what I mean with the rotation orders. Was anything unclear or weird? Might have been a bit wordy, but I hope the idea got through. Okay, let's take a 15-minute break, and since we went on a bit longer than I think. Let's take a 15-minute break. So we'll be back at 28, but I'll probably be waiting till 30. So it's probably a 17-minute break, but I'll be starting again
Okay.
at 18:30, and we'll go into orient space switching. And I can take other questions because I'm not going anywhere. If someone needs help.
I have a question. If you could look at my rig.
Yes, of course.
Um,
Oh yeah,
'Cause I think
you posted a question as well. Did you post a question about
uh,
the root
yeah, they're
thing?
like not super important questions though.
No, but I thought because right now you said that our parenting hierarchies were the same. The difference the difference between my root joint right now is that the root controller is that I can just like independently move it about. That
Oh, is the root controller only for the root joint?
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just controlling because if I want to move the entire character like around in root space, I can just move the master controller.
Yeah, I was really confused because I thought the root controller was basically redundant.
Yeah. I mean, I think for most cases, it's probably like you don't have to care about it. You can just like, yeah, you can just hide it and not like worry about it. But some like game movements, it's about like the root is usually the position. Uh, it's how the game engine keeps track of where the character is. So if you're gonna do like a climbing animation, you can solve that in different ways. But in some cases, you can maybe like teleport the character and then you launch an animation which has the root like up here on the ledge, and then you just traverse the character over to that. Right now, it's like if you wanted to do that, you probably want another controller that's not the master, because the master will drive the root still. But uh, yeah, it's often a good idea to be able to animate the root independently.
Alright.
And then the hip controller is basically just another one of the spine controllers, but just so you can, like if you want to bend the entire character over, you can do it with just that controller.
Okay. I had a small question about my arms.
Yes?
Let's see. If you can see.
I can see.
I think it's loading. Okay. Well, I did a bit of a stupid thing when making my arms, so it has like an angle, which means that my pull vector is over
Oh wait,
here.
I can't see. I clicked my own stream. I'm sorry.
Oh, great job.
Restart the stream real quick. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe if I do the entire
I
screen.
was like, oh wow, you made it look exactly the same.
Well, now I see my stream, so that should work.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, hell yeah, nice.
I created my arm joints a bit dumb because there's an angle here,
Yep, I can see it.
which means that my pull vector is over here.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if that's gonna cause me any troubles. It's a bit weird. In like these situations, I'll have to move
Wait,
the
what?
pole. I don't know if it makes sense.
Is the arm straight? It's just that it's at an angle.
Yeah, this is the straight arm.
Could you
It has
can
like no
you click
rotations and
the?
stuff. This one?
Oh no, I see. I see the elbow has two rotations in two channels. That's what I saw.
Yeah, but there's 0.
No, the joint orients, I mean.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not completely planar, because the hand is offset a bit. Did you not get any when you made the pole vector? You didn't get any rotations in the joints?
No.
Interesting.
So, but it's kind of annoying because I feel like the pole vector is...
Yeah, that's some weird interaction that you're getting.
Yeah. Like I'll have to manually adjust the pole vector if
It
I
has
want to
like a
do it.
weird offset. Like, it doesn't, it's like it wants to avoid the pole vector. Do you have any, if you, could you click your IK handle? For the right arm?
If I find it.
Oh wow.
Oh geez, I don't need everything.
Yeah. You can shift click if you want to minimize everything under, and then you can just click normally.
Let's see. IKFK. Here.
Yeah, so in
Oh
the,
yeah.
if you, it might always have rotation. I don't think the rotation should do much. But if you go into the channel box,
Hmm?
it has a scale of -1 on Z, which might be causing some weird interaction.
If I destroy this, is my rig gonna die?
Probably not. It's behaving very strangely.
Yeah, it's the same, I think, on my other hand. Yeah, this doesn't seem ideal.
No, it's not.
Would it be best to just remake the arms?
Probably, but like even with the like the only issue that I saw with the elbow being, or the arm itself not being planar, I don't see how it would cause this stuff to happen. Because it looks like you have like a twist offset on the on where the pole vector is, and the. Could you select the eye candle again?
Hmm?
Let's do it on the right arm. Uh, it doesn't have any offsets applied, which
Yeah.
is. Super weird. Could you try just remaking the specific the pole vector constraint?
I think I have, but I can try again. Just seen as new pole vector.
Could also try just quickly remaking the IK handle.
But it still has this.
Yeah, it's still not liking it. Can I quickly see the um, click the joints so I can just see how they're oriented? If you get closer a bit, so I can just see the transform thingy. Can you look from above? Doesn't look too weird.
Like my rotations on the joints felt fine.
Yeah.
But I think it's only really a problem at like very extreme poses, because now it kind of
Yeah, and
follows like I want it to.
there it works.
So it's only
But
really if the hand is over here.
does mine look weird when I go that close? No. How close can I get? I can get super close, and it seems to handle it. Very weird.
I'll have to think more about that. I won't
Yeah.
stop the rest of your lesson.
I might be able to like look more at it after.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we have 6 minutes more to go. If anybody else has any more questions. Alright. We will continue on. And now we will be doing, oh yeah, some orient space switching. Did I specify where it's what's, yeah. Let's see. On head and edge. Okay, hell yeah, nice. So now we're going to ignore the IK. You can apply the same like logic on the IK controls as well, depending if you want to, like if you're pulling the body away, if you want it to follow or not. Just gonna quickly go out of gimbal. There we go. Okay, so let's go into FK mode. So, where to start? Okay, we're going to start off by creating another group. We could use this group right now since it's zeroed out, but for good practice we're just going to create another group that we're going to drive over the left side FK control. So once again, create a group, select this controller because we want to match it. We can also just parent it so it's there. Zero out its transforms. I'm gonna parent it to that. We're gonna name it left shoulder FK orient group. And we're going to parent the FK shoulder under it. So the FK shoulder should still be zeroed, but now we have an extra group that we can drive some offset on. And what we can do now, let's do the same thing as we did with the IKFK switching a bit. So we're going to add an attribute on the shoulder. You can add it to this controller as well. You can add it wherever you want, just so it's easy to find if you want the feature or not. And we're going to name this orient space. Let's name it orient to world, and just have the minimum be 0, maximum be 1, and I'm gonna set the default value to 1 because I want the feature. I want to have the feature by default. Yeah. And it makes more sense to have 1 as yes and 0 as off. Not super sure if I want it to be a float, because I don't know if you want to be able to float between the two or not. But let's have it as a float for now. We can change that later if you want. I'm pretty sure you can change it. Can I mark it, edit attribute? No, we would have to delete it and create a new one, but that is also fine. Okay, so to have this rotate to world, an easy way is to just create an orient constraint between the master controller, which will be like the world reference, and you could also create just a group and just have it under the master if you don't want to hook things up directly to the master, which can be good practice, so the master doesn't become like a monster with stuff going out everywhere. You can have that housed somewhere else instead. We're just going to hook it up to the master for now. So we're going to select the master control, and we're going to select the clavicle control. and then we're going to select the orient group that we created. Oops. Control F. Okay. And we are going to constrain and apply an orient constraint. And now we're gonna keep the offset because these controllers are currently offset, and we want this to be like the default position. So we're going to apply the offset with offset, and now under this left shoulder here, we'll see the constraint here, and you should have a weighting on either or. So if we were to, if you rotate the clavicle now, you get a bit of weird like orienting because it's going between the two. So we're going to select orient group. You can quickly just, so it's just with the world. Don't know why it got a bit of do I have let us remake that constraint real quick just to be sure. So I'm going to delete the orient constraint. I am going to reset the rotation of the orient group, just making sure that my joints haven't done anything funky. Once again, select the master controller, select the clavicle controller and orient group, constrain, orient, apply. Why would I get rotations there if I'm going? Super strange. We can sort of show the behavior that we want at least. So now when we're rotating the clavicle and like positioning things, the arm is still being left. We're trying to keep its orientation, which is nice. But do I get orientations the other way around? Yeah, I do. Interesting. Gonna think a bit. Why does it want to rotate? It's so weird. Yeah, I have no idea, but and a solution that we can do is to just create this let's create and then create a locator. Gonna change the local scale so it's not as big. Gonna name this left arm left arm FK rotation or world rotation, and then we are going to select the shoulder, select that, gonna quickly constrain and parent constrain it so it snaps up there. We're gonna delete that. We're gonna name this one the world rotation locators. Gonna put this under there. We're gonna put this under the master, so we just have it housed here, but it's sharing this specific position. And because we got the same thing here, we're just going to duplicate this and name this clavicle rotation. And then we're going to take this and whoops, don't know why I pressed F there, but we're going to take the clavicle rotation and parent it under the clavicle controller. And then we're going to take both of these locators and we're going to quickly find the orient group again. So we're going to take these locators, the orient group, now we constrain, orient constraint, now we can turn off maintain offset, apply it, can have full weight, but so now when we put one there, nothing should rotate because it's sharing the exact same position. Hell yeah, okay. So now we just need to drive this constraint that we have here with this attribute. And to do that, we can either just set driven key it, but I wonder if we can do it in the node editor instead. Let's try to do it in the node editor. There, I'm going to open up a tab here. Don't need that. Oh yeah, this was me reusing the animation curves. So we're gonna grab the controller, which has the blending attribute, and we're gonna grab the constraint. Because the constraint down here has the left arm So you can hover over the buttons here. World rotation, clavicle rotation. So when it's 0 to 1, we want the normal to just be world rotation like that. And then we can probably add double linear. Can we do this? Because we basically want to do 1 minus this value just to get the flipped behavior on the other rotation. So let's just do a double linear. You can take this value. Of course, it doesn't want to show me. So we're going to show all attributes. Input 1. Just gonna multiply it by -1. And then we're going to output that. Can we show non-keyable? Okay, there we go. So we can put that into the input 1. And then pipe that into there. So this should be outputting 0. And that one outputting 1. Might have been unnecessarily over-engineered, but let's see. So let's rotate the arm down a bit. And then rotate the clavicle up. So if we blend that, yeah, okay, blends up. Nice. So now we have some orient space switching for the FK arm. Now let's do the no, let's do it, now we're doing it for the head, and I'm probably, instead of doing this, I'm gonna do it with just set driven keys instead. And since this was being fussy, we're gonna again create, let's go under create, and I am going to Control Shift left click to create a button here. Make it a bit smaller. We're gonna select the head controller, select the locator, constrain parent, just to snap it to that position, and delete that constraint, name it head FK world rotation, and we can parent that under our world rotation locator group, and then we can duplicate it and have it be let's do neck rotation, I guess. And just take this and take the neck controller that we have here and just parent it out on that. So we either have it following this. You can make the same setup for the neck. And if you have the head in neck, and then maybe this in chest space or world space. We'll see how it looks. It was a while since I did an FK neck instead of this neck, or a neck with the same setup as the chest is right now. But okay, so we have our two. Where did my other orienting go? Okay, there we have our neck rotation. We are also going to create a group. I'm just going to take that group and parent it under the head. Show it there. Set it out so it's matching the head. Name it head FK orient group. And then parent the head under it. Select our two locators. Whoops. And select our orient group. And apply another orient constraint. Can hide that. We can go into our. We're going to animation key set driven key set. We're going to add an attribute on the head. Let's do a different implementation where we're using an enum instead, just to show a bit of the different ways you can do things. I think enums are more common, you'll probably see them more often than you'll see a float blend, since often in this case we're just going between the clavicle and world, but in some cases you may want to blend between more than just two places, or rather pick between more than two places, and in that case an enum is very good, because in enum you can also expand later to add more things. But we're gonna name this, let's name it orient space. Have we enum, we can name the enums here. We can name one be neck, because that's what the one we're lining up to this, and the other one can be world. And then we're gonna add that. And I just added it to the wrong controller. Awesome. Just going to delete that attribute real quick. Go to the head, add attribute, orient space, enum, neck, world, add. So now we have a drop down list here with different spaces, or with different names. So we can select the head controller again, or the head controller, and load driver, and we have this orient space here, and we have the orient constraint as the driven. And right now the orient space is at the neck, so we want to make sure we're keying both of these at the same time. We want the neck rotation to be 1 and world rotation to be 0 when the head, when this enum is in neck mode. So we can key that, and then we can go change this to world, click the orient constraint again, and just flip these two and key it again. And now if we're in neck and we're rotating things about, it should just follow as normally, and then we can switch over to have it be world. And now I made neck be the default value, but more often than not you probably always want it to be trying to orient itself like this. Because without this it can be very hard to counter animate if you're moving about. Because you don't want to jerk the head too much. And right now it's just applying from for the head. We can also apply it to the neck as well if you want a bit of better blending. But I think it's solving decently right now. It's not tearing too much into anything. Are there any questions about the orange space switching?
I don't know if it's the thing you fixed. I kind of zoned out. But for when I'm trying to do this, if I have it set to only the world or only the clavicle,
Yeah, you get a bit
the
of
arm gets a
rotations.
rotation.
Yeah.
And when I tried to do your same fix, it didn't do anything.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe I missed a step. I'll rewatch it.
Yeah. You have to make sure that you're matching up the because I created two locators at the same position, and one I parented to the world, or I parented onto the group underworld, and the other one I just parented on the controller. And I think
Can you show where the locators are?
yeah. So I have one here under the clavicle, for example. I can just show it. So it's on the same position as the controller here.
Mhm.
And the world one is also on that exact same position.
Okay, so that's what I missed. I didn't move the locators.
But I have no idea why it was getting rotations. Because as far as I know, that's the way you normally do it. That's the way I've seen it done when I was studying, at least. But I think I do my constraint a bit different when I rig normally. But a good way of having things clean is to just put things on locators anyway. Now nothing is bogging down the master controller directly. It's just the information is just here. Okay. So now we can move on to some rigging cleanup. Hell yeah. Because the rig is looking pretty done right now. Things we can do that you probably want to do is coloring the controls to make them a bit neater. You can do that either by going into display here, and in the drawing overrides you can enable overrides, and in the slider here you can apply a color. It's pretty common to have like red and blue for like left and right. Another way of doing it is, I'm just gonna quickly check how these are written. Okay, these are just setting a specific color. There's also, if some of you downloaded this script from the same person that made the skinning tool, if you follow the same link you get this tool. You can also use the top thing here and just select the controller and click, and then you get a color. So either of those two methods work. I'm going to quickly use this just to make it a bit faster. I like to color center yellow, and like FK controls blue, Probably gonna do this one white as well. Oh, let's do, yeah, like that. And then select all these, make them red. Make them blue. Make sure I can't, I'm just gonna hide the joints right now. And make sure I can't select the mesh. Blue. Yellow. And then go over to IK. Nope, that one. So, there we have some pretty quick coloring. And we can do the feet layer. Okay, so what we don't want to do now is we want to be able to lock some attributes that we don't want the person animating to touch, or rather when, like for some, for example, the F key controls, if you're rotating these about and you key something, everything will be keyed and you just get a bunch of extra where did they go? There we go. So you have all these animation curves now. Most of them are just going to be 0 because they're not relevant, or for the scale just 1, but it's just a bunch of extra and you can accidentally click them, so it's a good idea to clean up what should be touched. So for the F key controls, it's common to just have rotations be available, and you can often also lock. So I'm just going to select all of these, and then I'm going to hold Control, and I'm just dragging over the names. I'm going to hide the visibility as well, so they don't accidentally hide something they shouldn't hide, because we want control over what's visible and what's not. And then lock and hide selected. And now you can only rotate these controls. So if I try to translate, I can't do anything. If I try to scale, I can't do anything, which is something we want. So with these blenders as well, we really only want the IKFK, so we can just mark everything, select both of them, mark everything, lock and hide. For the head, you can just select these. We don't want to hide that one, so we want to be able to have the orient space. We don't want them to touch scale or translate. So lock and hide that. You can also, like I said, you can also, like for these specifics, rotate the arm. Because since we're only rotating in this axis, we never want the animator to be able to do this or this. But usually you want to leave that open. You can in some cases also leave the translation open if you want to be able to bend the arm and do weird shit. But yeah, it's a matter of like how the rig is going to be used. Good to communicate with the animator. In some cases they just want it to be locked so they don't accidentally translate something. And for this, since in some cases you want to translate it a bit and you want to rotate it, we're going to leave the translate and rotate, and we're just going to lock scale. Going to do the same for this. Lock and hide. For these middle controls, you can have the translate opens, but since they're mostly just FK, just gonna make sure you can only rotate them. The body control, can lock and hide scale. And for the switching over to IK, you can select all the pole vectors. Never really need to rotate a pole vector, so we can just look everything but translation. For the IK controllers, you can lock scale. For all these foot roll controls, you can lock translation and scale. Here you can also, since it's very common, you might want this to be like, so a bit more freedom. How do you want to rotate this? Or you can lock it so it can only go in this way. Matter of like animator preference as well. And we forgot to color these, so I'm just going to we can just gonna select all these. Might be a bit like cluttered right now because I haven't made these nicer looking at all. I just made a bunch of curves. Same thing here. And the root we can color. And there we are. And most things we don't want to touch are locked and hidden. Just go through the rig. Make sure everything looks fine. Also check our joint and making sure that we haven't missed any weird rotations. Just do a bit of stick testing. We've done our due diligence. Constantly checking. Also scale it to make sure that works. Move it about. Rotate it. I should also probably save. And now I'm feeling pretty good about this rig. We can save again, and I'm going to increment save. Yes, because I'm paranoid, as you've seen. But let's try to show this. So I'm gonna try to delete the rig group. That works. Okay. Let's try to pose the character. Or rather, let's make a short animation. Of course, I just... And if we go into here and we delete the group, I just go into normal. Okay, that's good at least. If you have keyframes on controllers, you can either like select here and press delete, but you can also mark these here and break connections. I don't know if the keyframe somehow like stays somewhere in memory, but if you delete it, it disappears as well. Oh, forgot a skill there. Or wrote it, sorry. So delete that. Okay, just gonna break connection. No idea why that stayed. Break connections. Okay. But yeah, if you want a clean skeleton, you can usually just delete the rig, and now everything should be. Oh, it's still locking some parts. It actually gave me some rotations as well. Yeah, so if you delete the rig just immediately, you can get some weird rotations. What I've found is that if you take all these darn constraints and we group them into a group, an unparented group, and just name it constraints. Let's name it rig constraints. I'm just gonna put it under the rig group. I guess you can put it under the don't touch, because they don't really need to be parented under anything specific. They just get parented under because they still work as intended. But now, if you were to delete the rig, the constraints are deleted together, and I think Maya just likes that more, so we don't get any rotations. We shouldn't, at least. Oh, we still got rotations there. I wonder if I missed. That's weird. That might be because of our. Yeah, that's probably because of the blending setup that we set up, because we're not deleting those nodes immediately, which might upset Maya. But that's not super important. We should be able to, either way, without that, just easily just select the body, select the root, and just go into export selection. Let's just do it here. Let's name it whatever. Character mesh. Save. Probably not gonna go over most of the options up here. If you're baking animation, you usually want to be able to bake animation and make sure that your start and end are set up correctly. We want to include different models and skins. We don't have any blend shapes, but so it doesn't really matter. Constraints. There aren't really any constraints that are gonna follow along into game engines, so we don't want to include it in the FBX file. We're gonna want to include children, since we're not selecting the entire rig, we're just selecting the root. And we want to ignore input connections as well. So we're gonna export that. It's gonna give us some whiny errors about constraints export failed. The scene contains constraint. We don't care because we're not exporting the constraint anyways. You don't get this error if you had the bake animation applied or checked, because then it would bake the animations anyway, like before exporting. You might still get this unsupported constraint export failed, but I've never had any problem with that either. So we don't care about that. We're just gonna open up a new Maya. And we can, in the downloads here, slowly open up. scene. We can take our FBX, drop it in too soon before Maya was properly loaded. Okay, yeah, it gave me an unrecognized file type, because if you ever get that error, it usually has to do with, if you go into setting and preferences, there's a plugin manager. I search for FBX, I think. There's FBX Maya here that needs to be loaded and autoloaded. Sometimes that gets unchecked, and then Maya doesn't understand what an FBX is, which is fun. Now that's loaded, we can just, I think we can have all the default settings. Yeah, and just import it. We should have our character here. Now it included the group, but and we have all our skinning. The group for the body isn't super important. It might be, you can have the group parented on the world if you're exporting to Unity maybe. I know it's not an issue in Unreal. But yeah, here we have a...
It's an issue in Unity though.
Yeah, okay, so...
It doesn't like that. It will come out as a node or whatever it was.
Yeah, okay.
But maybe that was like Unity 2 years ago, so maybe they have fixed that.
Who knows? But
because yeah, it comes out as something random. At times, sometimes it
you
doesn't.
probably get an you get an FBX with a group above the body or the mesh, right? That's just
Yeah.
Don't know if it
and
causes,
sometimes
causes
that's
any
fine. Sometimes
yeah, exactly. I think that can be fine. But yeah, we have our little dude here. We could import him into game engine and it would work fine. And other things you can do if you want to be fancy, you can add the skeleton. You can add layers here. And I click the rightmost one, which create a new layer and assign selected objects. So I selected the root and create a layer and just create a skeleton layer, which now you can toggle visibility here. You also have the ability to set it as reference if you want it to be visible but not selectable. There's also a P here which toggles visibility in playback. So for example, if we take our rig group, add to a layer, let's name that layer rig layer, and so now we can toggle the visibility of our rig. We can also, if we turn off the P and we play our animation, it hides it. So we can selectively have things when we're looking at an animation and when we're not. But usually the skeleton, I just put it in reference and hide the visibility, and the mesh you always also want to mark it as a reference. I think, yeah, template you get it see through like this, but and you probably want that visible in playback. So now when an animator gets this file, they can't select without changing any options up here or anything. They can easily show and hide things. You can add different parts of the rig to different layers. You can also add, like under the master, you can add attributes, and that I'm gonna lock and hide this visibility as well. You can also like drive the visibility attributes that I've locked and hidden from here as well, if you don't like display groups, because some don't. It can be especially like cluttery if you have if you're using any form of scene referencing, where you can reference a file into another file, and then you can get a bunch of stuff here if you're referencing in like a character and a prop and another character. and you'll get all the layers from all those characters and stuff in here. And in those cases, you might want to toggle visibility of things in a different way. But for just one character, I think this is manageable. I'm also gonna rename this to mesh layer. And there we are. I think I've covered most things. Is there anything someone can think of that I haven't covered, that I might have said that I should have covered? I could cover twist joints if somebody wants that. But otherwise, yeah, lecture mostly over. Or yeah, over, because there's nothing like directly with that correlates with the assignment that I haven't shown. I don't think. Does anyone have a request?
I would like to know about twist joints, but not right now because I have to redo a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
Do you have a good tutorial or something?
I can link a tutorial for twist joints.
Thanks.
In that case, I'm just gonna go ahead and stop the recording and